Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Talk Show. Today, we're going to be talking about technology in the Catholic Church.
That's right. We're joined by Thaddeus Ruszkowski, Vice President of Technology for Fuzati. And we're going to talk about how technology is going to shape religion in the next 100 years. Stay tuned.
Great for you guys to join us. Got a lot of stuff to unpack here. Thaddeus, I believe you've been on another episode. We welcome you back, and you look really smart for those of you guys that are watching on YouTube. He's got a real big beard and thick glasses, so I'm sure we're going to get a lot.
I'm really excited to have Walter White from the last season of Breaking Bad on with us.
Oh, guys, maybe I shouldn't be here. All right. This is going to be fun.
No, I've just for the audience, I've never met anybody so passionate about technology in the church. So you're perfect to have on this. And gosh, millions of people are using technologies that you and your team have created to benefit the church. So I couldn't think of a better person to have on this show to help us guide this conversation for our audience.
Well, I'm excited to be here. So
good.
Now, before we get started, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and make sure that you click the like, share, and subscribe button. It's a great way to help us out and to get our ministry and these messages to more people using technology. Also, if you want to help support the show, you can go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Patreon. You can see all the different ways that you can support us financially with just a little bit of pocket change that helps us to continue to grow this show. We really appreciate it, and we got great gear in return. So let's jump into this, right? I think a lot of people, when they first hear, well, how is technology going to change religion? They immediately start thinking about all their cyborg overlords who are going to strip religion from them and they're going to live in a dystopian future. And I don't think that's really necessarily the case, because all we have to do is look at the past and see how the church and faith has utilized and incorporated technology to grow the mission of the church, to spread the gospel. I mean, we could just look at things like the printing press and how that revolutionized understanding of scriptures, understanding of religious texts. We can look at things like the radio and how Fulton Sheen was an early adopter of the radio, and how he was on every week on NBC radio back in the 20s or 30s sharing the gospel. We could look at that evolution through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, where people started using television, where you have, Fulton Sheen doing his TV show. You have Mother Angelica founding EWTN, reaching millions of people. Then you can even go towards more recent history, and you could look at things like the internet and how that's revolutionized. And, we look at things like Bishop Barron, or we look at Father Mike Schmitz reaching millions of people, or we look at apps like Hallow that millions of people are praying on. Yeah. So throughout all of history, technology has always been incorporated into the church, even looking at technology like clocks, that revolutionized the way that, people were able to pray the liturgy of the hour, or how the Catholic Church has always been at the front edge of technology, whether it's inventing things like the electric motor, it's inventing or leading the fields in astronomy and seismology and genetics, or founding the university system. Religion and science and technology specifically can and should go hand in hand. And that's what we want to talk about today, is how emerging technologies might shape the future of the Catholic Church and religion throughout the world.
Yeah, that's a great preface too, because you have the church creating technologies for a lot of history. You've also got them looking at technologies created by men, and then discerning how they can utilize that technology to, proclaim the gospel. And this dynamic has been at play since, religion, even in the Old Testament. The context is very broad. So where do we want to start from a standpoint of technology? What would be a good place to start, Thad?
Let's talk about the basis of it, right? And the basis of it, if we, Ryan, you alluded to or mentioned that university system. and the idea of searching for truth, coming to a better understanding of the world. And we have the opportunity with technology, in my opinion, as those that want to evangelize, to spread knowledge and connect people. Those two serve as the basis of any technology that we're going. If we talk about the printing press, we have the ability to spread the word so that many, many more people can have it. So it wasn't just monks transcribing scripture and you had very limited distribution. We maximized distribution with the printing press. If we talk about, apps of today, it's bringing people together at its best, not looking to isolate. So it's that core element of technology of what are we using it for? And how does the church engage in that and lead the way and not just look at it and say, oh, this is something foreign to me. I don't understand it. I'm going to take a step back and see where it goes.
There's many technologies too invented, right? I mean, like, we can, narrow in on the church. I think there's also technologies like the atom bomb. There's also, tanks, warfare, all these different things that I think provide a distinct evil for the church to look at. And in doing so, to maneuver in through discerning these technologies to say, we rebuke this, or, this is how you should use it, or, hey, maybe we can use this to expand the gospel, So I think about isolation and all these things. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of isolation going on in technology today. The reason why we're all here is because that doesn't mean, like you said, that we just give up and allow this to just overcome our society. The church is meant to proclaim the gospel in society. And so that's why I'm so proud of, some of the people you mentioned, Ryan, like Hallow. We'll get into some other ones too. And, maybe narrow in on a very smaller anthropology of web-based, cloud-based technologies that have emerged that we can all relate to a lot more in our own personal day-to-day lives.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure most people didn't come in to talk about the printing press on a podcast of the Catholic Talk Show and
cutting
you
edge
guys.
Technology.
Yeah, printing press.
You brought up a really important point, though, is that the Catholic Church does take a look at technologies and does help to discern through that, right? And that is the proper place for the church to be able to talk about technologies and say, how can this be used for the good of people? Because a lot of times technologies can be used for the detriment of people. And without the church giving context and talking about the theological or human impact of technologies and providing limits on it, even when you're talking about things like in vitro fertilization, or you're talking about artificial birth control, or if you're talking about even back in the early 19th and late 18th century when you're talking about rerum novarum and the impact of the Industrial Revolution on people. Mm-hmm. The church always has something to say and instruct and guide on how these technologies should be used for the benefit of people, not the exploitation or the detriment of people. Now, Thad, would you tell us just real quick a little bit about your background and why you're so uniquely qualified to talk about this? Because you've done some amazing things in technology, specifically in the Catholic Church. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Sure. I don't know how far back I should go, but I'll start with the years of youth ministry when we looked at everything we were doing. And inevitably, anybody that's been in youth ministry or any kind of ministry for that matter, you would do a retreat or something like that, and you'd say, hey, we need to come up with a T-shirt for the retreat. And somebody'd say, oh, this is the really cool shirt that everybody's wearing right now. We should just do a Catholic version of that. And it drove me nuts all the time. So it has motivated me in every decision we've made in building technology. Let's not just take what's best out there and copy it and slap a Catholic label on it. Let's build something that's the best and do it in the understanding of the search for truth, the evangelization of that truth. So fortunately, I was able to come on board with Fuzati. And here we've had the opportunity to build some amazing platforms for apostolates and nonprofits and organizations serving the church. Anything from a safe environment platform that serves about 1.6 million user accounts right now, where we're helping show that the church needs to be proactive in the stance on how we serve or how those who serve the church are informed, educated, but also doing background checks on them. So doing the protective services. So we have built out that platform that brings everything together to make it easier for people to do and yet still be comprehensive. With that, it's been great because we've learned a lot about how the church operates, and we've been able to transpose that over to other organizations, like working with Paradisus Day. And in working with Paradisus Day, we've built out an entire platform that runs web-based. It does desktop applications. It does mobile applications. It's video distribution. It's content distribution. All of those. So all of that ministry is served through a platform that we've built. And then we have other work that we've done with dioceses where we're doing a directory of different ministers in the church, whether that's priests or lay ministry, just so they can keep track of who's where and what's going on. Using technology to either distribute content in the form of like Paradisus Day that I just spoke of, or also, just internal mechanisms for management of things, for efficiencies, right? Not everything is going to be that Hallow app that everybody knows about, but it doesn't take away from the contribution. We also built an app that was one of the coolest apps at the time, was just a simple randomized alert that would hit you through the course of a day and say, take a moment to pray. Just because it was randomized, it took you out of whatever you were doing and hit you with this alert and just said, take a moment. Because again, as I'll harp on it, because it's something I'm harping on with my team right now, is we build technology not for the sake of building technology. There has to be a purpose. And that purpose is rooted in our understanding that we have a mandate by God to go and evangelize the world. And that happens, in my mind, through distribution of ideas and content and allowing people to come in, which is what's really exciting about AI as it stands right now, as we're looking to wrestle through what are the right ways to do AI, what are the wrong ways to do AI, and what can technology really do, and where is it limited? So I could keep talking, but I'm going to pause.
Well, it just brings up a lot to mind, like as we were looking at some of the previous things, like, the institution of the universities and bringing people together to talk about, things of this world to try to understand together. And then as you fast forward to where we are today and what you're talking about, I don't know, it's been, almost 25 years since the internet's been created, and so much has been developed. I mean, we were children of the internet. I remember the internet when I was, in high school, and a friend of mine started a website, and I'm watching him do it, and I'm like, wow. And what happens what's the interesting thing about the internet, and you've just alluded to this, and I think it's good to illuminate that a little further, is the technology that's been integrated into it, added to it, developed for better use of the internet. As we look over the last 25 years, I think the three of us would agree that it's improved to the standpoint now where we're doing quantum mechanics and we're doing AI and all these different things. And so for someone like you to be in this space and to be, somebody who is there at the ground floor, and to see some of the body of work that you've built with your team develop over time has also been, you can almost look at it as like more of a hyperactive approach to what's being given to you to use, what's been made, how to develop on top of that or start something new. All these decisions that you have to make for the betterment of the church, for the betterment of the product, it continues to evolve. And now we're at a point where, computations and analysis and these software products that we have eventually are going to be so much better and so much more usable from the standpoint of the computations that can occur, at a very high level. And it's just fun to watch all this develop, but I don't know enough about it, to navigate it.
I
you know?
you know
let's
I
talk
appreciate.
about a few of those technologies then that are going to emerge, right? And
Yeah.
that we're at the cutting edge of right now. And Thad, you brought up artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Now, this is probably the one that's on a lot of people's minds.
Yes.
Yeah, and I know that we've had some experience with artificial intelligence. You built that app where it tracked or mapped and digested all the works of Thomas Aquinas, and then you were able to have a singular chat with Thomas Aquinas about the nuances of theology.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's a great use of the technology. But how else, and we can all kind of scheme on this a little bit.
Sure.
How else might, say, artificial intelligence impact the church and religion in the next 50 years? For my part, Thad, you and I, so for people who don't know, Thad and I are going to be going to Rome here in just a couple weeks. We're going to be going to the Vatican and participating in a conference in the Vatican on artificial intelligence, where there'll be cardinals, there'll be Fortune 100 companies, universities, and leaders in technology. A lot of people are afraid of what artificial intelligence could become. Most people think of Terminator and artificial intelligence or
It's a good movie.
and take over the world, right? But I think it's good to understand what artificial intelligence is. Really, it is a language model or it is a indexing service for a database. It's just traditional databases on steroids.
Well,
How can we use that going forward for things like education, for things like spiritual guidance? How can we use that for things like increasing mass attendance, et cetera? What are your thoughts, Thad?
sure. So I think the first thing I would just say is that this is a rapidly changing area, right? It was at its, people have been working on this idea of artificial intelligence since the 1970s, right? And we can look to oftentimes science fiction to show us where the future of these things are, because that helps shape the ideas, right? The concepts of what's available. Index database searching has been proven out to where we can do that no problem. If you are following this space, you'll know that OpenAI just put out their O1 model, O1 preview, and O1 mini, both of which now have a reasoning factor associated with them. It's a very interesting space that is changing rapidly, and the opportunities are robust. And I just want to touch on one other element that Delacroix said a few minutes ago, is that when looking at this technology, the big difference between when the internet was, when we were playing with the internet in college, where it was you would create a website and anybody that would visit it would come through. We've gone through an evolution of this where Google created the opportunity for everybody to get to everything on the internet, make it so that you could navigate the internet and find those things. So when we were searching for something knowledge-based of the church, you could do a Google search and you could find a lot of resources that weren't readily available. So that's there. Now we come into an age of intelligence that a lot of people are calling this with OpenAI. With artificial intelligence, OpenAI being one of the forefront leaders in this. The idea being that when we have this technology, it is going to give us the ability to access more knowledge than any one of us, no matter how smart or capable we are at one time, to make connections between between resources and source material that we may have never known about, that draw these things together. What does that mean? That means that your average user, your average individual with a properly formed artificial intelligence, and I want to talk about that in a few minutes, but with a properly formed artificial intelligence will have the ability to understand things that just weren't in the realm of understanding before. And because it will be able to source out, we can, in the same way that scientists go about walking through and saying, okay, I understand this, but there's this next piece that I need to understand. Let me know more. Let me know more. And go down the wormhole to understand how things work. At its best, we will be able to use artificial intelligence to search for to search for truth, to find God, right? By making these connections.
Yeah, and the development of AI is kind of interesting because it's almost inverted from the relationship of technology prior to this implementation, where we would create something And then we would see the users wanting something else. And you've seen this in developing software where you layer on different technologies by adding them, by coding them on to provide more functionality. Whereas AI is almost like being incited to develop that technology on their own based on the promptings of a user. And that's what's been I think the biggest improvement of AI from a stack technology standpoint. However, I think it took a while for technology to get to the point where that could happen. So what I mean by that is the processing capabilities, the server spaces. I have a friend that builds data centers for Google, Meta, doing the fiber optics and the internet connectivities. Those are increasing like crazy right now because of the processing power that's been developed to handle this. On the application side, what ChatGPT OpenAI has been doing is receiving all these queries, learning from us on what it is that we want, and creating that synapses in various places. Whether it's travel or whether you're just trying to get information or whether you're, trying to figure out how to start a business, and it's pulling all these resources in and it's listening to your next question. And it's understanding how the human being is interacting with it to develop on its own, which I think is so amazing, develop on its own with the technology that's being added to it to increase the probability that you'll get something that you're looking for.
I'm going to put on my H.G. Wells hat here, and I'm going to look at a few ways where
it's a good looking hat.
Foresee, thank you. I just bought it. How AI might impact the church in the future and how this technology could be applied. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is that they're taking ancient scrolls that have been completely unreadable, things like that were found in the ashes of Pompeii, or charred scrolls in the Dead Sea Scrolls, or even incomplete texts. And they're using AI to be able to recreate and understand these documents. Imagine when they found the Rosetta Stone. I mean, it took years and years to do a comparative analysis between the Egyptian, the Greek, and then the old hieroglyphs. And they had to, crack by hand and crack that code. AI probably could have done that in a week at this point, right? And I think
maybe quicker. Yeah.
You can also start to see things like I can imagine. A lot of people talk about the Q source for the gospel, which was a list of sayings by Jesus that informed Matthew, Mark, and Luke. The synoptic gospels.
Yes.
Well, I think AI can do an analysis of that and say, look, these are the things, and this is how that text probably developed. Just like we were able to infer Proto-Indo-European from looking at all the different languages and the common elements, I think we could probably develop a pretty reasonable recreation of the Q source gospel. I think we can look at things like taking the letters of Paul, where people say, well, this letter might not have been written by him, and we can do an analysis and find out what are the textual similarities and differences. And using that to just take all the Vatican archives and understanding and find those connections and finding those synapses that otherwise you just have to have some monk sitting in a cell for a year, spending his whole life to get one or two. We can accelerate that now by 1,000-fold. That's an exciting use, I think, in the analysis of documents and making connections with existing texts.
Absolutely. And there are a couple elements there, right? One, it's access to all of the information. Right? Mm-hmm. Is that monk that you're referring to that's doing it doesn't necessarily have access to every document, every piece of information that would be associated. So as we are able to ingest more and more of this source material, we can bring that together. The point that I want to put a caveat on here is, that Q source that you're referring to. Absolutely, we could use generative AI with all those sources, inform it with every historical sources, all the sorts, and create something. But we don't know that that's accurate. And I think there's a concern that we do need to have, that there are a lot of people that look to AI and rather than saying, yeah, you know what? This is a good possibility. It's not factual, right? It's not going to necessarily, it's not like we've got this magic key that all of a sudden now I've got the Q source. But in understanding a bit about that, we may be able to search or unlock the ability to go find something else, which is what's really cool.
And you brought up a very, I would say, from the consequences of all this and AI, what businesses, everybody's looking at right now is it, because it should be 100% correct, right? So the idea when we're developing software or whatever, right? You have bugs, you have functions that go in that need to be refined. You have all these different things that you need to consider with data, all these other things. And it is a perpetual state of improvement because of something's wrong with it, or you want to add something to it and you're jamming two things together. With AI, the development of these products that we'll eventually see, the thing that makes the product useful is 100%, right? And that's most of the time in business, that's what they're doing, which I think we can talk about with the church and some of the things that, you're doing is like, is it working all the time? Because if it's only working half the time, you're creating, like you said, just this place where it's like, can humans now interact with what's going on to improve it? Or do we need to fix what's going on inside of this, model?
And just on this AI piece, you made me think of this situation I just heard. There are a couple companies out there that are creating AI bots that you just chat with, right? That you just talk with and you go through. And I heard the CEO of one of these companies on a podcast, and she was describing her product and the interaction that people were having with her product and talking about the value of sitting there and chatting with this artificial intelligence chatbot. And she said, yeah, I could see that people would end up marrying their chatbots. And I said, wow, what a misunderstanding of reality, much less chatbots, right? So I bring it up, not just to see, Ryan, you cringe, because I do enjoy seeing that. The real reason for mentioning it is it reinforces the need for us to be engaged from the outset. Because the other piece is we look at these frontier models, the large language models that we've all heard about, Claude, OpenAI's ChatGPT or O1, or any of these large language models that are going. They're trying to be everything to everything. And there's a certain element there that I've heard it written or read it that people are saying they're coming up with their God model, right? The idea of an all-knowing, an all-everything. And that's just not a good idea, right?
Right before this show, I asked ChatGPT right before the show to give some ways that technology will impact religion in the next 50 years. And that's one of the exact things they brought up. So they said, in religious AI and theology, the cultural impact of AI gods. In some speculative scenarios, advanced AI could be seen by some as an entity with superior knowledge and insight, and influence theological debates on the nature of the divine. I mean, could we just devolve back into, primal animals saying, wow, this computer knows everything. What do we need God for? Any question you want to ask, this computer, it knows. And here's the thing. AI is the summation of human knowledge. All it is taking everything we've thought of, put it into place, and make it easily indexable. Mm-hmm. So when you look at books throughout the past, we talked about the printing press, which was old technology. It still had to have an imprimatur. And an imprimatur is a stamp by a proper theological source within the church, whether it's a cardinal or bishop that says, this book is okay for the faithful to read, or a nihil obstat, which means nothing stands in the way of it being published. I don't think, and I hope, no AI-produced content will ever receive an imprimatur, especially, or at least in a chat or a generative model, because it can always change. That's one of the natures of it, is that, like, if you're having a chat, the sources for that inform the language model can change, and it can give you a different answer. So it's a moving target. You don't have a defined, open and closed piece of work that can be analyzed, and then get an imprimatur. So do you guys think the church could ever give an imprimatur to anything AI generated?
Before you answer that, Thad, I just want to say you guys are going to be great in Rome. I mean, already I'm seeing like perspectives that are, incredible when put together. But
we're just going for the pasta, Ryan.
Huh?
We're just going for the pasta. We're doing all 4 pastas of Rome.
Sounds so good.
Yeah, it's gonna be amazing.
We're going to Rome in April, so
That's right. Well, Brian, I'll find all the good places, and me, you, and Kelly and Jen can go have a great meal there. I'll do it.
I'm no spring chicken, bro. I know my way around Rome.
You notice how he had an accent change as he started saying that, Chill?
Yeah, he's like, hey.
All of a sudden, he's one of the guys.
He's more Della Croce and less Della Croce.
Yeah. To your point about imprimaturs and nihil obstats, or however we say it. I'm technology. I don't go in that hard. Here's what I'll say is that the technology can make connections and show patterns, right? The best way that a brain does. And so as we look at these models, there's a conversation to have about the future of what AI should be. But there's also a recognition that the technology is exactly that, technology. It's not the thing that God created at the beginning, right? When God created us, it was in the image and likeness of him. And so therefore we are made in a way to come to an understanding, right? We are inspired by the Holy Spirit to be able to have revelation. And I don't think that when we look at AI, we should look at it as revelation. What we look at it as a path to further our knowledge and understanding, and really tilling the soil of our souls and our minds to have that inspiration of the Holy Spirit that will then allow us to create that next thing, right?
I disagree. Okay. Healthy debate alert.
Let's do it.
The technology is, and this kind of couples with what I wanted to say about evil and what you mentioned about God, the God being AI, which is so stupid when you think about it.
Yes.
It really is so dumb.
What you need a nihil obstat for, or whatever it is not the technology. It's the content that the technology is using.
That's it.
You cannot cut loose some learning machine that utilizes its own theology, right? There has to be, in the language that's put in the learning model, and even the tone models and all the other models that are coming out that we apply to those, there has to be a prudent, right, model put on it that's predictable, that understands certain things, that when it grows on the user will be a steward and not something that takes on the life of its own. The other thing is the language that's being put in there. It's got to be divine revelation or books. And before somebody gets into it, they need to know, like, look, this is not divine revelation. We are pulling from books that were created by saints or by individuals who look in this direction for information, but it is not applied by the church as divine revelation. And that brings the comment that I had about evil. That's where people use this, right?
Yes.
To properly disinform somebody on purpose to draw them away from God. And what I want to say to you is it goes all the way back to the printing press. What happens? Everybody in the world could print a Bible. Now we have 90,000 different Christian denominations. That was the single most invention that allowed the most dissolution of a united church, of a united Catholic Church, of a one holy apostolic church that's ever existed in humanity, right? Great invention for the church. The church used it, was one of the first ones to use it. But when in the hands of other people, the same people don't change. Evil doesn't change. Evil will look at this technology in opposition of the church, no matter what you say. And that requires authority in the church to be able to understand what components are in play so that they can say, this is good for the church.
Right.
I think that need will always be there.
Yeah.
And it's something that has happened, quite frankly, since the time
Satan
of the
doesn't
printing
give
press.
Satan doesn't give you a glass of poison and say, drink this. He puts one drop of poison in a 60-gallon jug of wine, and then you take a drink from it, right? And very much, LeBron, that's really astute that the printing press was like a modern Tower of Babel, right? It created the ability for anybody to put whatever spin they wanted on. And that same thing could happen with AI, where you could just say, do everything 99% right, but when you get to, I don't know, transubstantiation, here's my personal view, right? And that is the danger. Now,
let's hold on. If I could just say,
go ahead, please, Ben.
just brass tacks here. I'm gonna push back on what you said, Delacrosse, in that
Awesome.
the Gutenberg isn't the biggest issue. Is that it's scaling wise now anybody with a smartphone, right, can put something on the internet and nobody vets those people anymore, right? So it's not just you had to have the money to be able to buy a press. Now there are 12-year-old, 10-year-old kids that are going on websites and social media and posting any kind of thing. And it creates a lot of misunderstanding and division that's there. So the potential for impact is far exceeded now with the internet. But then when we step into the artificial intelligence arena, the scale, the ability to create, go in and put in a quick prompt and create 50,000 posts to go out and flood the internet and make it look like there is something real here or that there is some kind of revelation is even more impactful than that Gutenberg press. So, you're correct in that it made a huge impact. I don't want to take away from that.
Yeah, but you're still wrong because what you're talking, and I know I'm a horrible debater. I probably should have been a lot more generous, you know. I vehemently disagree. That's like next down. But no, so like what I'm saying is what we're saying both fit into the same category, what we're speaking of, which is AI as a whole.
Yes.
What we have determined so far with technology as it relates to AI is that you can train something independently from everything else.
Yes.
Right? You have done this with St. Thomas Aquinas. You've done this with other. That does not mean that this St. Thomas Aquinas chatbot, which, you know, is a rudimentary example, a basic example of how this technology works, would somehow be flooded by infidels or whatever it is. And data is now generating this model to train on that, to dispense upon the faithful. So you're talking about another evil, right? Like the evil of AI and training models utilizing what's out there to create more chaos. Right?
I'm talking about people and our fallen sense saying, I'm going to use this tool, right? The same way you could use a screwdriver to build a house or kill somebody, right?
Right. And I'm saying the church could, by nature of how the technology is used, put an imprimatur on the content that's in there, the effectiveness of the training model, and the securities that are in the training model that don't allow it to be changed in a way that's not monitored by the church.
We just talked about how the printing press created 90,000 different translations of the Bible, and some of them have agendas, and other ones teach contrary things. Right here in my Bible, this is the Dewey Rheims. This was by Cardinal Gibbons, September 1st, 1899. Now, I have to put my faith and trust in that as a cardinal of the church, he was guided by the Holy Spirit and the teaching authority of the magisterium of the church to say this Bible is approved. That takes an act of faith on my part, and it'll take an act of faith in the future for people to say, look, I really want the church to provide an imprimatur on the technology, and I think that's going to be a big thing. Right. You know, that's going to be important. Now, the reason I originally pulled this off the shelf, though, is I'm looking at this Bible, and underneath it all, it has different footnotes, right? I'm looking at, right now I'm looking at Ezekiel chapter 8, and it's telling me, look at this psalm, or look at this thing. Or if I look at the New Testament, it'll show me the Old Testament typology of an example of how this is fulfilling Scripture, or whatever. So it's footnotes. So one of the things that Thad and Fuzati is developing in a good way is using artificial intelligence, not to create a new Bible, but to create a adaptive and powerful Bible study to say, look, what does the Bible teach about X? And it'll go and find all the different things that the Bible says about a specific topic, pull those together and create a little compendium, and then give cross references. What is the Bible? Where in the Bible did Jesus say this? Here it is. Okay. What are contexts? Then you can go look at sources, whether it's, Challoner, right, who wrote the great commentary on the Bible, or any of the saints, and say, and it's very similar to what Bishop Barron did with his Word on Fire Bibles, where they went and they found all these great commentaries and put it in one book. This technology
9
that
books.
Fuzati is seeking to develop, well, yeah, it's a great Bible. What Fuzati is seeking to develop is an app that does the same thing, that takes trusted sources that have imprimaturs, creates a closed environment around them, and then is able to then become the greatest Bible study leader that you can find,
Right.
to anybody. So this is not a technology that's taking content of questionable authority. It's taking authoritative content and then making it easier for people to access and gain from and understand. I mean, the impact that AI could have on Bible study and on scriptural context is enormous, as long as we have those imprimaturs to give us a guardrail.
And you're right. I will say nailed it on the need to make sure that the content coming in and training it is of upstanding content. Here's where I'll add to this is that there are people out there right now who are looking to do that, right? If we look at Magisterium AI, the Longbeard guys have been doing fantastic work of ingesting all of the Catholic Church documents that they possibly can, so that they know that the training material that's going, putting guardrails on that system to be able to pull it together.
Did they open source that?
They have not. They have the page up. You can go and you can ask questions. It footnotes things. It cites the different. It brings those together. Again, knowledge work, right? That you can use that to make it for. I think what we can have a few minutes of conversation about is there's training models, right? There are those in the same way that somebody creates a source of knowledge, and then there's implementation, right? How does that get implemented? What does that look like for a consumer or for an organization that's there? Because you look at some of the other things out in the space, there's an app out there called Truthfully, where he's focusing on apologetics, so that if you're in a conversation and you want to talk about, hey, I've got this topic that I'm being contested about, let me just ask the question.
Virginity of Mary,
right?
For example.
So, you can punch that in and it gives you responses, again, giving you a basis from well-sourced material that's training the model, that puts it together and does a response in a very specific way. And without getting any nerdier, right, as we look at the future of AI, right now it's been this model of shaping. And the basis for most of these models, most of the situation, is the human brain. And so what they've said is, okay, how does the brain work? And as we've looked at brain science, we've said, okay, we've got the neocortex that does it with the cortical columns in the different areas that control different pieces. And so what I will say moving forward, I believe that AI, the way we're going to see this model, the way we're going to see AI play out is specialized models that are interfaced by a general model. And that general model does language related things. So when I ask it a question, it understands English, it understands Chinese. Those can come together and do the translation piece, right? There's real-time translation in the Meta glasses that are out there. So you can be talking to somebody, they're speaking a different language, and it's speaking into your ear the translation in near real time.
We should just all speak Latin and it wouldn't be a problem.
That's on brand, Sheil. I like that. So now what we will see based on RAG searches and based on a lot of these advancements in AI is a specialization, so that people can they can have those data sources like we're talking about, right? That Longbeard is working to do with their AI to say, this is specialized in this area, but yes, you can use a general language model to interact with it, whether that's spoken, that's images, that's written, however you want to do it.
Yeah, let's talk about things that that model could apply to. Let's say, for example, canon law. Canon lawyers are going to love this. They're going to be able to go through canon law, go through past cases, and be able to create things for tribunals or canonical cases very quickly. I think the same thing will happen with, well, definitely instructors in your seminaries, right? It's going to be able to help seminarians more quickly through the discernment process so that they can always have, when they're going through their questioning. I think it's going to really revolutionize things like marriage prep, sacramental prep. Those are things that it's going to really help. I think even preaching. Let's say you have a preacher who's like, a priest or a deacon, and they're like, okay, well, we're coming up on Trinity Sunday, which is, the hardest Sunday to preach on in the year because you have to talk about the Trinity coherently without falling into heresy.
Just talk about clovers over and over again.
Right. Well, it's Clover's partialism. That's a heresy, Patrick. So
on brand.
Okay, let's go through let's go through the homilies of these great saints and then find commonalities, find something so that it can help inspire preaching. I think AI can also look at things like, okay, church attendance. When are people coming? When are they not? Why is it happening? How can we better than serve people? So you're talking about a ministerial aspect, right?
Yeah.
We could talk about things like, grading, Catholic school children and using AI to find out where they are not being properly formed. So you're talking about things like formation. There's a lot of different applications.
Ryan, I would say those are all great ideas. I think the things that are exciting to me and my team are when we're able to look at things that aren't as straightforward, right? So when we look at something like the education of kids in Catholic school and tying in things like, okay, this data group or this data set of test scores that came back this year, let's put those in the context of what was in the media. Let's put that in context of the instructors that they have or the diocesan issues that are going through. Because what we're able to do is apply a far wider net to processing that information on seemingly very non-connected data elements, right? And bringing that together and saying, are we able to do it? And the word that you said when you were talking about homilies, right? That inspiration. And I go back to the idea that with more knowledge and with more understanding, we really believe, if we really believe that God can move anyone, that it is on us to provide opportunities to till the soil of someone's soul and somebody's brain for good growth, right? Not creating rocks in there and rocky ground and all of those things that we hear about in Scripture, where Jesus is telling us, keep yourself fertile for understanding these things. And that's where AI is able to bring together far more items. So, in thinking about this, I put them into categories of increasing knowledge, doing analysis, or supplementing the capabilities of an individual. And that last piece is the one that I think is really interesting when you start looking at how it's going to apply in other things, right? Outside of what we know what we're going to be able to do.
That's a good point. That it's not always, it's not all lightning and, oh, wow, I'm interacting with this thing. A lot of it is going to be ministerial. And that's one of the big problems. I mean, it takes a lot of work to run the church, let alone a parish. And if there's technologies that can help a priest go through their email inbox and prioritize pastoral needs, if he can go through and look at its flock, look at their interactions with the people in his flock and say, okay, this person has been around in a while, automatically let me know that I need to go minister to this person. If it tells me, or it tells a priest or administrator of a parish, hey, these expenses are coming. Let's create a maintenance plan. Let's look at these different things, right? There's some real administration things that can free up the church to be incarnational, so that a priest spends less time in an office and more time on the altar, less time looking at ledgers and more time hearing confessions. And that's with the lowering amount of priests. That's going to be a very important aspect.
And then like my entrepreneurial heart's just saying like growing the churches. And Thad mentioned this with the God model, which, I don't know that that'll ever, I mean, it might try to be something, but with the way they segment everything,
it will inevitably fail, right? Of being everything there, right? Because it will ingest the fallen people, right?
Yeah.
The content that will go.
Yeah. So like, but what I'm saying is within the improvement side of it, and we use the idea, especially with this talk show, and we see this a lot, right? Like I went to Mass Sunday at 7 and a guy came up to me and says, "Hey man, I watch your talk show." And I'm like, "You have no idea." Like, he's like, "I didn't want to come up to you. My wife's got cancer," because we're kind of like, "Hey, like he's busy." And he came up to me. I said, "You don't understand. Like the reason why we do this is for you. Like we realize that the internet has a veil. Like we already know that. We don't know who's listening, but the reason why we do it is for you. Like you are one of the people that listen to this so I know you're there and I want to see your face and I want to know that you're listening because it's why we do it." Right. And so that dynamic of the internet and everything, which we all know has, plagued a lot of people with loneliness. And now you just order food. You don't go see the guy at the market, like all this kind of silliness with, distracting us from people, that this might have a place to draw somebody from that isolation, which the world provides plenty of, into, hey, go to a church. And so I see a lot of this coming together over time. We're talking 10, 15, maybe 20 years down the road, but coming together to do all of this heavy lifting to increase human interaction, which is what I love. When I see somebody, I love it because I know they're human. I know they're watching this and I'm grateful that it's making an impact, right? Like that's why we do it.
One of the things that I think technology is really making a great impact on, and is a great example that we can point to, is the sponsor of our show is Hallow. We've talked about that throughout this, but that's a perfect example of how technology is not just a cold, hard 0 and 1 with quartz crystals flashing here and there. It's making an impact in real people's lives. Over 1 billion prayers have been prayed by people using this app. Ryan, I know Jen, your wife, who's battling cancer right now, really leans on Hallow to supplement her prayer life. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I'd like to send a picture. I don't know if we can throw this up, but there's a picture of Jen. She, has frontal cortex issues, so very short-term memory loss. But her back lobe remembers prayer, remembers events and things that we've experienced in life. I show her a lot of pictures, from when she didn't have it, and she smiles and she can recollect all that. And so with her, prayer is very important because it extracts from her, the back of her brain and obviously her heart, things that she knows. And, obviously we prayed rosaries for years and years, but Hallow's been really instrumental in this. And a lot of times there's too much noise in the house. So she goes back and she rests a lot. So she'll lay down and some of the kids will go back and she'll be praying with Hallow. And I have a beautiful picture I want to send you guys of Leo, my 5th grader. He's just passionate about the Lord. And, a picture of them two who have fallen asleep listening to a rosary on Hallow. Most beautiful picture. So, again, we know the founder. He's been on the show several times. Very gracious, prayerful man, had his conversion through this. He knows, just like we know, there's a veil. And God's got it when it leaves the veil. He's got it when we load it up on YouTube, when we load it up on the podcast. There is that veil. And what he sees, he's not able to. God sees it, right? Like so, and God uses it. So
God definitely gives preference to people who subscribe, though, whether it's on Spotify or YouTube or follows us on social media. I have that on good authority. Okay.
Yeah, and
now real quick,
I want to contribute to this pitch here a little.
Hold on. He wants to contribute to the pitch.
I was at a conference a couple weeks ago founders of Hallow were there. Had a chance to talk with them. I've known them met them through the years. Won't say I know them. But what I do know is that every time they interact about or talk about the app, it is about what it does for other people, not what it does for them. And so that selfless approach to technology, to putting something out there to better other people's lives, to give them an opportunity is what drives that. So, it is the reason that it is successful, because it was given over to God.
You're like Flavor Flav over here, bro. You're like a hype man. Yeah.
Let's hype.
Real quick, though. Hallow's doing some cool new features they wanted us to tell you about. So if you go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Hallow, right now you can get 3 months free. Typically it's 30 days. They've expanded that. Now it's 3 months free, okay? And starting on October 7th, they got some really cool things. One of them that I'm excited about is they're doing a guided series on Mere Christianity. This is one of the greatest books ever by C.S. Lewis. And it's going to be led by Bear Grylls, the survivalist guy. And he's going to be joined by both Matt Fradd and Father Gregory Pine, both of whom we've had on the show. This is going to be super cool. So every day they're going to read a passage from it, they'll reflect on it, and then they'll pray together. And that's all going to be through the Hallow app. They also have some stuff coming up we know we're getting into election season. So they're going to have some things specifically for election week to help everyone be prayerful, be civic-minded, and keep your sanity during this, crazy time, right? Which I think is really great. But then they also have all the things and the features that you know and love that have made it such a huge hit, like the Examens, Lectio Divina, Novenas, Imaginative Prayer. They have Sister Miriam, Bishop Barron, Mark Wahlberg, Father Mike Schmitz, Jeff Cavins, Jonathan Rumi. They've got so much on here. So again, this is a great use of technology. And we're talking about how technology will change the church in the future. Technology like Hallow is changing the church right now. So again, go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Hallow. Get 90 days free. Try it out. Let us know what you think about it. And definitely take part in this Mere Christianity Challenge, because this is a book that will change your life. And being led by those guys is pretty awesome. Now, guys, to wrap up episode, I wanted to talk about one thing. So we talked about AI, right? And I think AI is one side of the modern technology or the future technology coin. The other one, because AI is really it's an interior-based technology in the way that you incorporate it. It's going to go into your head. I want to talk about augmented reality, because this to me is more exciting, and maybe just my disposition, but augmented reality sounds like something that's going to be way more, useful in prayer life. So augmented reality is, your vision goggles, your Oculus, or which one do you have, Thad? Uh-oh, technology Apple guy here. What does he got?
Boring.
Uh-oh, there we go. Thad, you have to wear that for the rest of the episode. You got your
here we go.
The Apple Vision Pro.
Dude, that's going to be our thumbnail right there.
That is 100% our thumbnail. So augmented reality has the ability to put you in a place and take your senses and augment them. So there's a lot of different ways. So Fuzati, one of the cool things that we've worked on is an augmented reality experience. And this should be launching soon for the Basilica Cathedral in Savannah, Georgia. So you can walk in there, take your phone out, and you can hold it up, and you can look at the stained glass windows, and it explains who created the artwork, what it's trying to depict, the history of the cathedral. You can hold it up to a statue, and it tells you more about that saint. It gives you a guided tour in a way that's so much more interactive than just walking on the street, looking at the church and saying that's pretty. It can augment that experience.
Yeah.
And,
I would say fundamentally, I think AI will eventually be a terrific source for it. Mm-hmm. Not obviously not now, but there, as you were saying, Thad, like translations can occur in real time. Like there is definitely some overlays there, but I would say like on a fundamental level, it takes the world that you're in and not a computer screen or a phone as its source of data input, right? Like that would be like my assessment, like on a very fundamental level. It's not the screen. Well, you can use it, but what it's doing is it's taking data from a source around you. And once AI models begin to pick up on that, it's just going to be working in the background. It's going to know who you are, and it's going to help you. Like, you're going to be like, hey, man, like, I need to pray more. Find spots when I'm, quiet or, whatever. But the thing is like, I don't want to wear that crap. I mean, did you see Thad with it?
I looked awesome.
I
don't know about
Thad,
you.
do the pitch, man. Be the hype man.
Putting that on your head and being able to pray in the Holy Sepulchre while you're doing your rosary. Imagine putting that on and being able to be
Ryan Delacroix, don't hate, man. I'm telling you right now.
Dude, I need a hype man right here. I ain't lying.
I'm telling you.
For example.
Okay, go ahead, Chill.
So real quick, like, people think that because it's in a remote or a non-incarnational place that it has no spiritual value. But I can definitely foresee people being able to participate in a papal audience in St. Peter's Square, real time, using these glasses, to where anybody in the world can be right there with the Pope. And people will say, well, that doesn't count. That's not, you can't get the blessing. But all we have to do is look at the Urbi et Orbi that the Pope gives every year. And if you listen to that, and you listen to it on radio or watch it on TV, and you meet the requirements, you can get a plenary indulgence for listening to that and receive the blessing through that medium, through the radio, through the TV. So why would it be any different through those glasses that Thad was wearing? That's going to be something great. Or imagine seminarians being able to study with a master theologian in Rome and not have to leave Topeka, Kansas, right? Imagine being able...
They can do that now online.
Well, I know, but imagine being immersive in there instead of just looking at a screen. Imagine being able to look around. Imagine being able to go with a theologian and talk to him and walk through, hey, we're studying the Passion of Christ, and be able to virtually walk through the Via Dolorosa and explain it.
Could it make my kids quiet if I put it on?
Well,
in the house,
do that with
make them start acting better.
It might, but I don't know if it's you got to be careful of the content that is going into them to get them quiet. I will say this. I see some real concerns about VR taking off and being huge, but I also see massive potential. I think the example that you're describing.
You mean AR, right? AR?
I mean, that's a VR. If you're fully immersed, it's VR. And I'll tell you, as a technology guy that rarely leaves my workshop here, i.e. the basement, there are times when I need to just escape. And you would be shocked at what the experience is like when I can put that on and put myself in Bora Bora sitting on the beach. I know I'm not in Bora Bora.
How much did you pay?
Not as much as a flight to Bora Bora.
Not as much as a trip to Bora Bora. But the point being that it gives you a release, a change of situation that in some ways allows you to escape the pressures of the immediacy, right? In a way that allows you to then go to something more. And we know that that's prayer, right? That we reach out to God to be inspired and to be in it. Here's the concerning side is that
you're talking about before you continue. You're talking about Happy Gilmore when he closed his eyes and went to the happy place in the midwest.
Absolutely.
Before Shooter McGavin comes and kisses his grandma.
Or the alligator. Right?
Yeah. And then,
all right. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure that's kind of the happy place.
I'm always good for a Happy Gilmore reference.
Okay.
And when Sheil was talking, he's told us before this, he was going to mention Urbi et Orbi. I thought he was talking about the Orbis that Mr. Beast used in those pools. But we're not obviously doing that.
Not doing that.
But the idea of virtual reality giving you the ability to be someplace else virtually. Ryan Delacroix, you and I have gone out into the woods and in mountains and all that, and we go with the groups of guys and we talk about what an amazing experience that is. It absolutely is, and there is no replacement for that. But to be able to go on, and one of the guys that we went on those trips has sent me panoramic photos from Yosemite or different places in Northern California. And in this headset, I'm able to put the panoramic up and almost convince myself that I'm there. And what was really fun, I've got panoramic photos from Nats Park from, I don't know, 15 years ago, when you and I went, and I open it up and I'm looking, and you know what? I turn my head to the right, and there you are pointing at me with both of your fingers, making some goofy face. And it was this moment of reconnecting. It was a spark of reconnecting. And I picked up my phone and I called you right afterwards, because it's the idea that we would connect. And so, to touch on that fear before you so rudely cut me off, was that we don't want it to be a replacement, right? Or a permanent crutch for escaping the reality of the world, right? And so that's why AR, that everybody's leaning into, and for everybody that knows about the new iPhones that have this camera button on the side, the AR is here, right? The whole reason that button's there, they're marketing it as the camera button, camera control. But the second side of that in their announcements was you're going to be able to open up and use Apple Vision, and it will augment reality in front of you through the phone so that you can see information associated with it. And so you'll be able to look, hold it up in a cool scenario, hold it up on the front of a church as you're in your car at a stoplight, and see when mass times and adoration and confession times are for that church without having to go in and search and Google and do all that. You get some of that in Street View as it stands. They use it for geolocation. But all of this technology is iterative. And it all takes, and with that, I mean, this step that we take now is going to inform the next step that we take, is going to inform the next step that we take. And it's why it's all the more important that we connect the technologies of tomorrow to the implementations and the approved work of the church of the past, and create that lineage, that linear growth, that iteration from the first writing of the gospel to the AR experience of seeing the scripture passage in front of you through your glasses as you're standing on the Mount of Olives, right? Those things are amazing.
Can it replace bad music in a church?
Sure. So let's look at something like The Chosen, right? People I love it. It really
What's
puts
The
you
Chosen?
in. It's a TV show.
Oh,
So
it's a TV show.
It. It really puts me in the Gospels. Or I love the Passion of Christ. I can feel Holy Week. Or the Nativity story. I can feel what it was like being there. Those are all just kind of forms of imaginative prayer.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and they put you in that time and place. So imagine.
No, it's great.
For example, you were able to read the Bible, and then you put on your set, and you're able to be there while Jesus is giving the Sermon on the Mount. How inspiring is that? I mean, you read a book, and it's a great book by, I don't know, Hemingway, and he describes everything down to the detail, or Tolkien, where he describes every landscape. Cool. But for most people, the movies hit home harder because they can see it. Now imagine being in it. That's cool. The power of AR and VR that is really going to give people a inspiration. Or Ryan, for example, I mean, imagine you have on your glasses and they help translate. And you can go into any church in the world and understand the Mass. Now, it wouldn't be a problem if it was still in Latin, but, we are where we are.
It would be for me.
That's cool ideas. I like these ideas. They're great. They're all going to be.
These are all going to happen.
They're all going to happen.
How technology will change the world and religion in the next 50 years. These will happen. Somebody will create a virtual reality experience of the Bible. And when you read the Bible, you can see Moses split the Red Sea, and you could be there. You can see Jesus healing the paralytic who was lowered through the ceiling. You can be there for any of these experiences. You can be in the room at Pentecost, and you can contemplate. When you're doing your rosary, imagine having a great voice leading you the rosary, and you're in there, and it's like, leading you through the glorious mysteries, and each one, it puts you in that mystery. Imagine how much harder you can meditate on the mysteries of the rosary if you're in the scene. That's going to be the power of virtual reality. Augmented reality is hearing the priest and understanding his sermon in real time, walking past a church and knowing the Mass times. But this, to me, is more exciting. AI is going to be more impactful, but VR and AR, I think, are going to be more inspirational.
But I think the combination of the two is where it's all gonna come into place.
It switches into VR.
Well, it's look at you disappearing there. It's like you're using AR on our talk here. No,
He's putting on
there's
the
a
ring.
book by Max Tegmark called Life 3.0, and he walks through this history. He's, I believe, a professor at MIT or something like that. It's been a while since I've read the book, but walks through. We look at it and we say, oh, there isn't a possibility of just AI turning into some alternate life form alien thing. But he walks through the logical steps of how that could possibly happen. You look at Asimov's Foundation platform, all of these old science fiction or explorations in science and technology are the soil that we're all trying to till to create the future. And it's all the more important that the church be involved in that statement. And is the reason, Sheila, you and I discussed, should we go over to the Vatican for this forum? Because we want to be involved. We want to be engaged. We want to be part of the community that is shaping that. Because as we look at the church and we look at the people that make the church up, we want everyone to come together, that we want to invite people through the doors. Those that have an inclination that want to build something, let's prop it up. Let's make sure it's informed.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is the responsibility of helping other Catholics, particularly younger ones getting into it, like encouraging them to do it if they're in that mindset, and then also helping them understand it, because institutional curriculum sometimes just doesn't flow as fast as it needs to.
Right.
So, Thad, before we close, would you tell everyone a little bit more about Fuzati and where they can go to learn more? So if you've got a apostolate or a Catholic organization out there that needs help, why don't you tell them a little bit about Fuzati and what they do?
Sure. Fuzati, digital marketing software and website company created to bring the best of technology to the church, to the gospel. Team of about 40 something people at this point. I haven't checked in with HR. That implements these things. You can reach us at Fuzati.com or email me at thad@Fuzati.com. I would love to have conversations about things that people are doing. We build software. My team builds software. We're trying to build the future of what's going on, ranging anywhere, as I mentioned before, from websites to desktop and mobile applications. And we're tinkering with some of these VR space. Why do I have the big nerdy headset? Other than I'm a massive nerd, because we're building stuff in there. So Fuzati.com, look us up. You'll see some familiar faces there.
Yeah, thanks for that conversation.
Yeah, Fuzati's worked with everyone from Augustine Institute to Dynamic Catholic to OSV to Augustine Institute to Archdiocese. I mean, Fuzati really is deeply ingrained within the forefront of technology in the church. And it's something that, I think the three of us together have really seen great impact on the church, and we really hope to continue that. So when we're over at this, Ryan, you'd be going with us if you weren't taking care of Jen so closely. But we're going to be at this AI technology, bringing this same kind of mindset there. So if you have any ideas for us or anything that you would like us to have in our heart and our mind as we go over there, make sure you leave comments. What do you think about how technology is going to change the world? What concerns do you have? Make sure you go ahead and leave those comments right now as you're watching or listening. And again, go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Patreon. You see all the different ways you could support the show. There's tiers as little as $5, and they make a massive impact in our ability to continue the show and reach more people. We have great things like hoodies, coffee mugs, candles, all sorts of cool stuff that we can send your way in our gratitude. And again, like we said earlier, God will love you more if you click the subscribe button right now. I'm confident of that, because God wants you to subscribe and stay closer to great Catholic content like this. So whether you're listening on Spotify or iTunes or on YouTube, subscribe and leave us a good review. It helps us a ton.
When I see people and they tell me about it, I was like, dude, I'm not talking to you unless you subscribed or clicked like. And they're like, oh, yeah of course.
The only reason I came on this podcast was so that people would recognize me. I mean, come on.
Our last episode
you guys
was
have
on
such
the
a big
humility.
audience. I just wanted to be part of it.
Yeah, our last episode was on the litany of humility and how far we have already fallen.
Hey, and just a quick, there will be a big announcement coming out about Fuzati related to technology in the next month or so. So keep an eye out. I'm sure these guys, Ryan, you'll keep everybody abreast of it. But some exciting stuff. We've got some big plans and some big opportunities.
No,
Great.
Thad, it's always great talking to you. We talk, I don't know, probably every single day. So it's always great to get your perspective. And you bring so much great insight and consideration into these things around technology. It's really been great having you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Well, I appreciate being here.
You're a great youth minister to me. I appreciate it. God bless all you guys. We will see you next week. Thank you, Thad.